Hello fellow brawlers, I'm KairosTime and it is time for another Brawl Stars tier list. That's right guys, with the most recent balance changes, we are coming out with version 6. And while it did take a little bit longer to put out than the most recent tier list, that is because Supercell did come out with 15 new incredible maps. Still, we've put those into consideration and I think this is going to be a good one for you guys. Hope you enjoy the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. For today's tier list, we had 16 dedicated players over 10,500 trophies. Discuss the meta heavily and make sure that we have the most accurate tier list for you. If you do have 10.5 thousand trophies or more and you're interested in helping out, make sure you go ahead and join the Discord server. There is a link in the description below, and go ahead and wait for an announcement on how you can help. Now, this tier list will not include Meteor Shower, Life Leech, Energy Drink, or Robo Boss. After all, it is a competitive tier list. But if you are interested in a tier list for those different mods, make sure you put a comment in the section below letting me know. And of course, guys, make sure you subscribe for future tier lists and turn on that notification bell so you do not miss it. Quick reminder on the tiers, the S tier is reserved for excellent brawlers that are great options for every map, or at least almost every single map for the specific game mode. These are the brawlers that I highly recommend you play in the solo queue with randoms. A tier is for great brawlers on most of the maps in the game mode. You could do solo queue with these brawlers, but I actually recommend most of the time playing these brawlers with teammates. Then we have the B tier, which is good for brawlers that can be excellent choices on the right map and with the right team comp, but I do not recommend playing them in solo queue at all, because they do tend to be map specific and team dependent as well. Let's go ahead and start off by talking about Gem Grab, where we have Nita going from the A tier up into the S tier, Penny going from the A tier also up into the S tier. We have Bo going from the B tier up into the A tier, Jessie moving down from the S tier into the A tier, Barley going from the A tier down into the B tier, and then Frank going all the way from the S tier down into the B tier, and of course Colt is being removed from the competitive tier list for Gem Grab. Let's go ahead and talk about arguably the strongest brawler in the meta right now. Okay, second strongest to Spike. And guys, that is Penny. Her most recent buff made her incredibly strong and so much easier to use than she previously was. She kind of went from being a really high skill cap version of Jessie to just a better version of Jessie. She does more damage, her shots actually fire faster than Jessie's, and now that they have an equally wide shot range, it's a lot easier to hit brawlers with her shots than Jessie's. Not to mention the fact that her turret is much harder to get rid of from an enemy team because you can hide it behind walls, and that turret has an insanely large range that covers a wide portion of the map. She does take a spot on the competitive tier list for every single game mode with the exception of Heist, and even then there are some people that would argue that she's at least B tier in Heist. This does make her one of the best brawlers in the game right now, if not the best. Also moving up from the A tier up into the S tier is Nita. Now Nita isn't necessarily stronger because of any balance changes that happened to her, but because of balance changes that happened to Frank. One of the reasons why Nita went from the S tier down into the A tier was because Frank was so extremely prevalent, and her low DPS and equally short range to Frank made it a lot more tricky for her to actually take care of him. Now that he's kind of gone out of the meta, she does have a lot more viability in Gem Grab. Her bear does a great job at pushing enemy brawlers back and controlling a portion of the map. She has excellent survivability in comparison to most of the brawlers, and this definitely makes her an excellent option despite her lower DPS. Bo is also moving up into the world from the B tier up into the A tier. This is mostly actually due to the fact that there are more maps being added to Gem Grab now that have a lot of bushes. This makes him a little bit more of an obvious choice when you're trying to play him as a gem carrier. On top of that, he does actually outrange quite a few of the other gem carriers, so if you are really careful playing with him, he can be a great option. Jessie is actually moving from the S tier down to the A tier. Now Jessie still is a great option for gem carrier, but Penny just simply outshines her too much in so many different ways. Now Jessie does actually counter Poco and Pam with her turret in a way that Penny does not, but even then, I still think that she is less competitive of an option than Penny is. Barley is going from the A tier down into the B tier. He's still a great option on some maps, but there are so many more maps out there where throwers are not really the most ideal brawler that it makes him a little bit more map specific, and that definitely categorizes him as a B tier brawler for Gem Grab. As I mentioned, Frank is moving from the S tier all the way down into the B tier. Frank was incredibly overwhelming in the most recent meta, but with his balance changes, he's a lot easier to handle and deal with than he used to be. And while he is an excellent option on some maps like Bone Box, for most of the maps there are better options. Colt is being removed from the B tier section of the tier list down into the non-competitive section. While a highly skilled player can absolutely make Colt work in gem grab, even then there are better options than him in most maps, if not all of them. He's just no longer a competitive option, especially because Ricochet does such a much better job at controlling parts of the map. Next, we have the tier list for Showdown, where we have Crow going from the A tier up into the S tier, Bo moving from the B tier also up into the A tier, Frank going from S down to A, and then Ricochet also moving from the A tier down to the B tier. Bull is being moved from the non-competitive tier up into the B tier as well. As a reminder, for the Showdown portion of the tier list, teaming is incredibly rampant over the 500 trophy range. The tier list is made to be a competitive tier list, which is essentially over 500 trophies, and so teaming is taken into consideration for these tiers. First up, let's talk about Crow moving from the A tier up into the S tier. Now, despite his low HP, Crow does such a good job in Showdown due to his ability to keep brawlers pushed back and away from him. Additionally, his poison actually makes it harder for other brawlers to prevent themselves from being backstabbed, which allows for teaming organizations to kind of actually get rid of certain brawlers in those situations. On top of that, his super does allow him for a quick escape if he really absolutely does need it, or for additional DPS if it calls for it. Bo is being moved up from the B tier up into the A tier. This really does, once again with Bo, is just the fact that more maps with a lot of grass are actually being added. It does make him a more obvious choice in a lot of situations. Frank is moving from the S tier down into the A tier. He is still a good option, but his nerf made him less of an overpowered monster, because let's be honest, he kind of was an overpowered monster. But we'll see if the meta continues to be favorable or unfavorable towards Frank. Ricochet is moving from the A tier down into the B tier, mostly because his really low health actually makes him a really easy brawler to backstab. He tends to really only do well on maps that have a lot of walls that allow him to bounce shots off of, which does place him into the B tier category where he is kind of map dependent. Bull is being moved from the non-competitive tier up into the B tier. With the addition of more maps that are adding a lot of bushes, Bull is a highly more favorable brawler than he used to be. Now, he's incredibly good at backstabbing, which makes him an obvious target for teams, which is one of the reasons why Bull does tend to struggle. But I think now there is a good enough reason to actually allow you to be able to push him competitively. Next, we have the Duo Showdown tier list, where Barley is moving from the A tier up into the S tier, Frank is moving from the S tier down into the A tier, Nita is going from the non-competitive section up into the B tier, and Pam is going also from the non-competitive section up into the B tier. For Duo Showdown, Barley actually does a much better job at controlling an area on a map than Dynamite does. Now, he does have less burst damage than Dynamite, but he's at least comparable to Dynamite for certain reasons. He's a solid option on all maps, particularly if you pair him up with another brawler that can kind of cover his weaknesses, or in some situations another brawler just like him, like Dynamite. Frank is moving from the S tier down to the A tier. Frank is obviously moving once again because of his nerf. He's still a great option, just not quite like the obvious one that he used to be. His ability to stun other brawlers gives his teammate an opportunity to kind of wipe other teams and things like that, which makes him still a great option. Nita is actually going from the non-competitive section up into the B tier. She actually has really good survivability, particularly for her range. The fact that she has decent HP for the range at which she's able to attack allows her to kind of keep away from other brawlers and keep away from those dangerous situations. On top of that, you throw her bear into the mix, which does a great job at pushing enemy brawlers back or even putting them into really tricky situations where they do get pinched up against another team. Just like Nita, Pam is also moving from the non-competitive section into the B tier. She has even more survivability than Nita does, and her healing can really help out, particularly if she does have a teammate that is really tanky and has more HP that she can actually utilize that healing for. She does have a really high DPS up close to enemy brawlers, which does help make her a good option for Duo Showdown. Next, we have Heist, where Dynamite is moving from the A tier up into the S tier, Nita is going from the B tier up into the A tier, Terra is going from non-competitive up into the B tier, and Ricochet is also moving from the non-competitive section to the B tier. Dynamite is definitely making his way in Heist up into the S tier. Now, similar to Barley, he does a good job at controlling the field from a distance and utilizing those walls. At max level, his star power additionally allows him to jump over walls, that other brawlers would normally have to walk around or just blow up. And speaking of blowing walls up, he is able to blow walls up or get rid of sections of grass where enemy brawlers may be hiding by using his super. This makes way for Daryl rolls on maps where Daryl typically struggles to get a roll in there, and he can do a really good amount of damage onto the safe if given that opportunity. Recent additions to the Heist maps actually provides more walls for him to be able to hide behind, which makes him an excellent option most of the time. Nita is actually moving from the B tier up into the A tier. Now her bear does a great job at pushing brawlers back, and on top of that, she actually does a good job countering throwers with that bear. Due to her having a longer range than the shotgunners that are typically really popular in Heist, she can help keep them pushed back at a distance, and the fact that she can attack both the safe and enemy brawlers does make her a little bit more viable than we used to think that she was. Tara, interestingly, is going from the non-competitive side of the tier list up into the B tier. Now she does a good job at controlling the shotgunners from a distance and things like that, but additionally, if there are a bunch of shotgunners that are getting close to the safe, then she can use her super to get rid of them. I wouldn't say that she's the best option, but she is at least a competitive one if you're wanting to play Tara in Heist. Ricochet is kind of in a similar situation where he is usable, not on the best on all of the maps, but there are some new maps that really do highly favor Rico. As long as Rico is paired with another brawler that can actually like break through the walls, that would allow him to easily gain access to the safe and be able to deal a ton of damage at a long range away. The one benefit to using a Ricochet versus like a Piper that also has a really long range is the fact that he has a faster reload speed, so he can continually add that DPS onto the safe. Next we have Brawl Ball, where we have Mortis moving his way up from the A tier up into the S tier, Nita going from A to S as well, Jessie getting a bump up from B into the A tier, and then Penny going from non-competitive, skipping the B tier and going all the way into the A tier. Mortis was an interesting one, okay? So previously Mortis was definitely S tier for those really top tier players that can play him excellently, and just an awful choice for most players. With his speed buff that happened a few metas ago, more and more people are learning how to use Mortis, and even though he's not the easiest brawler to play, he absolutely can be an S tier ball carrier for most people to learn, as long as they put the time and effort into learning how to play him. Now, I would kind of say that he's actually like an S plus tier brawler for the competitive pro player, and a B to an A tier for everybody else. Because this is a competitive tier list and more top players can play him now than ever, I do think that he deserves this S tier spot. The pros do say that a top level Mortis will beat a top level Primo, even though El Primo is generally easier for you to use as a ball carrier. With that being said, he definitely does deserve that S tier position. Nita is also moving from the A tier up into the S tier. This is mostly due to her ability to control a big portion of the map, and because her bear does a great job at pushing enemy brawlers back. A lot of the competitive brawlers in Brawl Ball typically have lower DPS, and as such they do really struggle against that bear. Jessie's going from the B tier up into the A tier. Now her turret does a great job at giving most of the S tier brawlers a very hard time, because they have a hard time dealing a lot of damage from a distance. Her area control really does make her a strong option, and a lot of the most recent maps also help kind of favor her as well, which does make her a great option. Penny is also making her way up to the A tier, but skipping the B tier, going from non-competitive up into the A. Now, Penny was actually already kind of a low-key good option before her buff. It just took a little bit of time for us to recognize that she was actually a good option. Now that she's had her recent buff and she's gained some of that recognition, she's definitely, guys, a very solid option due to her turret controlling a huge part of the map, and also because in Brawl Ball, typically you know where enemy brawlers are going to go, and a lot of times there are people bunching up that allow her to take advantage of that burst shot that happens when she does hit one brawler. I'm telling you guys, Penny, she's strong. Next we have Bounty. Two changes to Bounty. Not very much is changing here, but we have Poco moving from the B tier down into the non-competitive tier, and then also Frank doing the same, going from B tier to non-competitive. Poco made his way into the Bounty tier list when Ricochet originally had his nerf, and also when he recently had that one buff that just made him incredibly strong. Since then, he's been nerfed a little bit, and his DPS now just doesn't allow him to play competitively in Bounty any longer. Frank also made his way into the Bounty tier list just because of his recent changes that made him so incredibly strong with that additional range and also his super, but now he's just, with his recent nerf, just not that great of an option. Honestly, he's actually kind of awful in Bounty, just don't play him. Here we have the boss fight tier list. There are no changes being made from the last week. Frank, Shelly, and Spike are still the best anti-boss brawlers, while Nita and Jessie are still the best brawlers. There is an argument that Barley or Dynamite could actually be moved up into the A tier as good anti-boss brawlers, simply because they are able to get rid of Jesse's turret from a distance and stuff like that. But even then, we still consider them to be A tier brawlers. Then of course, guys, we have the Robo Rumble tier list, where only one change is happening, and that is that Mortis is moving from the S tier down into the non-competitive tier list. The Mortis exploit was really fun while it lasted, but it's just no longer possible, and even if you do try to do it a bit, his damage per second is just so low that he really is just an awful option, and you're better off going with other brawlers. I hope you guys really enjoyed these Brawl Stars tier list videos. Make sure you subscribe for more of them in the future, and if you want, I may even do one based off of mods in the future, so let me know in the comment section if you would like that. In the meantime, I wanted to give a huge thank you to all of those that helped out with the tier list. We have Chist, Cradu, EDTM, Illustria, Jeff, Little Fox, LOL, Off the Bean, Olive Oil, Pika, Portal, Real Canadian, Sandy Cheeks, Snowballer 88, Super Bram, and The Secret. Once again, if you would like to help out with future tier lists and you're above 10.5 thousand trophies, make sure you join my Discord server and wait for that announcement. And for now, guys, this is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in Brawl Stars.